Yeah, here we are again, Avon Distribution Center in Avon, Ohio. Today what I want to talk about a little bit are soil conditions regarding moisture. In other words, wet conditions, moist conditions, and dry conditions. Now we all know that a plant has to be watered after it's installed, and maybe for at least a couple of years. Now the conditions I'm talking about are the conditions that are after that plant has established. And establishment can take anywhere from 2 to 4 years depending upon the variety and size of the plant. I'm only going to touch on a few today. If I try to do them all, we'd be here till Christmas of 2075. Also, I've picked out a few plants that are not readily known by everybody, even though you might be in the trade, and I'll point these out as I go along. I'm going to start out by talking about 3 plants, common plants, that you all plant, what that will take care of and grow well under extremely wet conditions. Wet conditions is where you get a heavy rain, might be a little low spot in the lawn area, water stands maybe for 24 hours, usually goes away by then, at least 36. And the first one we're looking at right here is birch. You've all seen birch in wet conditions, I'm sure. They do quite well. I've seen them planted along ponds, and that is always a good choice for a wet condition. Another great plant for very wet conditions are, of course, any plant that is in the salix family, which is willow. And this is just a weeping willow that you're looking at. But that newer Nishiki willow, that variegated one, that's a good one for wet conditions. And also the one that's called blue Arctic willow will also tolerate conditions like that. And there are many, many more varieties. I'm now standing in a block of winterberry holly. This is one of those plants I feel that is underused. It is a great plant. This is the plant that at Christmas time you can take the berries off. They persist into the winter time. You can use them for decorating or whatever. Little quick story. Many years ago, I was out the east side of Cleveland going through a field with a landscaper and the grower, and we were tagging. Came across a field that was totally flooded, and there were plants in there. I asked the grower, of course, aren't those plants going to die? He says, no, they love that moisture. I never knew that. Learned something new. So winterberry is a very desirable choice. Okay? I'm now going to switch over to plants that grow in what is called a moist area. A moist area is one that does not hold water like the wet areas do, and it is something that is generally associated with the semi-shade area maybe. Also, it rains heavy and remains damp on the surface, say for a day, 24 hours, maybe 48. And there's a lot of plants that'll take this condition, okay? The one we're looking at right now is Itea Little Henry. It's a nice little plant, gets up 2-3 foot. It's a white flower in the spring, very colorful in the fall, red foliage. So just a great plant. This is another plant for those moist conditions. This is called sweet shrub. Not known very widely in the industry, but it probably should be. It's a beautiful plant. This is a new variety called Aphrodite. Gets up 6-7 foot. You're looking at the bloom right now. It gets a bunch of those red flowers on it in the summertime. Really is a nice plant. Try to work something like this into your plants, especially for naturalized gardens. Really fits in. This is another great plant for those dampish conditions. This is Clethra. This variety here is Ruby Spice. It does bloom in the summertime. It doesn't get real big. It gets a pink spike type flower in the summer. Finally, this plant is being recognized as a great landscape plant. It's a little block of forsythia. Forsythia, this is one of the newer cultivars called Show Off. All Forsythia cultivars take damp conditions. Very, very strong plants. Of course, good yellow bloom in the springtime, early spring. It's a great plant to consider. Another great plant that will tolerate those moist, dampish conditions are all the magnolias. They seem to thrive under those conditions. Most of us know what they are right now. They're great plants, early spring bloomers. And we do have a very nice selection right now. So consider magnolia for those situations. We're now looking at a little block of inkberry. This is Green Magic inkberry, Ilex glaber. It's a great plant, and it does do very well in those dampish conditions. However, it does need more sun. It's not a shade plant. Looks like a boxwood, but it's not. It does need full sun to a light shade. I'm now going to move into plant varieties that will tolerate dry conditions. And let me repeat what I said in the beginning. Plants have to become established anywhere from 2 to 4 years, 3 to 4 years, to achieve what I'm telling you. And we're looking at boxwood. That is one of the plants that once it is established over that time frame will definitely do well. All these dry or drought tolerant plants are excellent also for your commercial work, because that's where they get the least amount of care. But even so, every now and then, all plants do need a little moisture, and most of the time after that time frame of establishment, after that, the rain in our area here will usually just take care of it. The same as with the boxwood, all of the old-fashioned taxus yews are very, very drought tolerant, again, after they are established. Now, if we get into a drought situation, say 2 months or 6 weeks in the summertime of hot and dry, even though these plants are drought tolerant, I would make sure that they do get an occasionally watering. It doesn't have to be once a week. Could be spread out, say, over a 2 to 3 week period after they are established. We're starting to see a little resurgence in junipers. Everybody's aware of what they are. There are many varieties. Some newer varieties with really, really quite nice. I think the reason for that resurgence is we've had a couple very bad winters, and junipers do live. Very little damage seen on junipers. But juniper is one that is also very drought tolerant, and it's something to think of, especially on those commercial sites. This is another great choice for those dry or drought conditions. This is Mirica or bayberry. Bayberry is a very, very good plant. They can get a little size to them, easily maintained. This is that plant that you see around a lot of the utility boxes, the utility companies, when they put those ugly things up on every corner. This is usually what they plant around them to try to disguise the boxes. If they live under those conditions, they basically will live everywhere possible, so don't be afraid to use them. This is another variety that will tolerate those dry conditions. This is called Diravilla. It's in the honeysuckle family. As you can see, it is variegated, white and green leaves. Gets a little yellow cluster flower, late spring, early summer. Does not get big, but really holds up under dry conditions, again, once it is established. A few times this year we talked about the barberry family. That's what we're looking at right now. But when it comes to dry conditions, barberry on my list is probably #1. Very, very tough plant, but it has to get established after that time frame I told you earlier. We're now looking at a block of fine line buckthorn, one of the newer proven winter introductions. It's an upright grower, as you can see. Can get up to 6-7 foot, maintains 2 to 3 foot width. Very shearable, you can maintain it, and again, a good dry situation plant. This is the last drought resistant or dry condition plant that we're going to see today. and it includes all of the buddleia, the butterfly bush. The one we're looking at here is, lo and behold, pink microchip. It is a little dwarf, beautiful plant, as you can see. So with this one, I'm going to wrap it up for this week, but I'd like to go over those 3 conditions. And the first one are wet conditions. That's when water during heavy wet periods or thaw periods accumulates and stays on top of the ground for 24, 48 hours. That is a wet condition. Be careful in those. The damp condition, again, is where we have heavy rain period or rain, and usually in a couple days it does dry out on top. The soil is fairly well drained under those conditions, no standing water. And dry conditions. Dry conditions is when it rains and dries very, very quickly, usually a sign of porous or very good soil conditions. So next week what we're going to do, we're just going to do a show and tell. We've gotten so much new stuff in here just in the last couple of weeks. We're going to do a walk around on some of the new stuff we've gotten in. Summer crops, stuff to look forward for fall. So we'll see you again next week.